Hey. Tonight's going to be, a little more sedate Sunday evening kind of a post. Last night was a little spicy, a little Saturday Night Live, wild man kind of stuff. So toning it down tonight for you guys to make a little more sort of thought experiments happen around airflow through hospitals. I accidentally turned the phone off when I was trying to switch screens or stop the video last night, and I was running out of daylight. So I just thought I'd leave it there. It was kind of like get it out there and get people starting to think about it. These isolation efforts that we're seeing with a lot of stuff going on outside of the hospital and parking lot and tents, all of that kind of stuff. I don't know what the stats or what the picture is like for cross-contamination and all of this stuff eventually getting in the hospital. I have a feeling that's an eventuality, and I'm wondering, I'm going worst case scenario with stuff as far as like, okay, so we're in overwhelm a couple of weeks from now. What are we doing to limit that viral load inside the hospital once it's in there and established? And maybe some of you are thinking we're never going to go inside the hospital without these patients, whatever. I should be better versed on a lot of this stuff, but I'm just kind of throwing around some ideas out there to stimulate some thoughts. I think sometimes when you track with what everybody else is doing, you're also kind of like buying into that track. And I'm kind of like out there sometimes quite a ways out there and thinking in different terms and different ideas. Not all of them are good. I agree that, I'm probably whatever, like an outlier on some of this stuff, okay? So I'm gonna try to keep this short tonight. Quickie thoughts on what I was talking about yesterday was, these kinds of internal ventilation systems where you can bring air from the outside, poke some holes in your exterior of the hospital, open some doors, open some windows, bring in fresh, clean air, flow it over top of your staff and in the more dirty or more contaminated areas. Do it that at a higher flow, and then the rest of the hospital will exhaust out of areas that are close to the ER, close to the ICU. All of this orange air here in the middle, this is more like where all the contaminated air meets and then goes out. Okay, so I posted this last night on Facebook. Big question here is how many of you are tracking to my Facebook posts. I haven't figured out how to post the picture on YouTube comments, but I'm going to post my link on my YouTube comments after this video for my Facebook page, and you can go back and look at the Facebook page. I should have done that yesterday. I've been a little bit, variable in the last couple of days, and I apologize if I got a little nasty last night. I really can't control that stuff sometimes. It's just the way I roll, okay? So anyways, here's what we're doing if we're doing like big exhaust fans, poking holes in hospitals, making air entry from cleaner areas to the dirtier areas like the ICU and the ER, and then getting all that air out together. The dirty air doesn't travel across the hospital. It goes out very close to the ER, goes out very close to the ICU. All right? So now that we're talking about that quickie stuff that you can do like maybe in a day or two, where you're just punching some holes and putting up some exhaust fans. Renting some big exhaust fans and just slapping them in different spots in the hospital is quick, right? Like you can do that hopefully in a few days. Thinking long term, like how bad is this going to be? What are we going to be set up with down the road? If hospitals become more or less, very much isolation zones where there's no visitors. Right now, I would say the capacity of our elevator systems in hospitals are probably pretty good overall. And my thinking is, rather than looking at these floor by floor makeshift ducting systems that I'm talking about, to move air around inside the building? What if you're looking at using a couple of elevator shafts as your ventilation? So in other words, you know, if this is an elevator car down here and it's on the first floor and it goes up to the second floor and then up to the third floor, what you do is you release it so that it goes down, down, down all the way. Like there's probably you know, some kind of a system where you can really get it down low into the basement of the operation. So pretend that elevator car is down and out of sight now, and we've got 3 stages or however many floors, right? However many floors your elevator's doing, and at the top of these shafts you've got your handy little ventilation house, and they generally have fans on them to kind of like keep air moving in and out as the elevators are going up and down. I think the elevators push the air more or less. I think there are like slow fans sometimes to kind of like keep things moving as well. My thought is, real quick, if we're going to go and look at this like a big long-term problem and it's getting to be a real disaster, like something that isn't correcting out in a month or two, and we really need to think bigger and more airflow, dedicate a couple of elevator shafts near your ER, near your ICUs, to be ventilation shafts. And you either modify this house that sits on the top of your building where you're getting your ventilation, you either like cut it in half or rip the roof off of it or something, where it's no longer just a kind of like a box for venting your elevator shafts. It now becomes, you know, more of a beefy structure. You're losing my head here, unfortunately, but hang on, I'll just shift the picture here a little bit. So you've got a beefier structure up here, and on that beefier structure you mount a great big fan. I know I'm losing daylight here. We'll see how this video turns out. I might repeat it tomorrow morning. This might be the Sunday night silent version. But anyways, this fan up top, mounted in the structure to get us moving a lot of air. Okay, so think about converting your elevator shafts in strategic locations in your hospital to exhaust fans that will move air out and viral loads up into the atmosphere above the hospital. You can control a lot of this with the elevator doors, so they would be open at, you know, different levels of first floor, second floor, third floor, etc. You would have them slightly open on floors where you're not taking a lot of that air out of there. You're moving some of it, but you're not too worried about moving a lot of it. But if you're down on the first floor where the ER is, those doors are open really wide. And so if you're blowing air, let's say 30 miles an hour outside off the top of your roof, you're opening those big doors on the bottom floor near the ER to suck like 15 miles, 10, 12 miles an hour of wind through those doors. And then on different floors, less. Some floors, maybe you just completely have the elevator doors closed and there's only like, you know, what can get by around the elevator door apparatuses in the gaps. But you can play with the elevator door width on different floors to make airflow better on certain floors and less on other floors. So for example, here's your ER, right? And you've got some holes around it that are sucking in clean air, and that's going out your big fan here at the top. So a lot of these other areas you'd leave tightened up, but let clean air come in from the ER and then go out vented off the top of your elevator shafts. Same thing over here in the ICU. This is the ICU here. You're sucking in a lot of air around the ICU and through the ICU, outside, up through the elevators, off your top fan. I'm losing light here, guys, so I'm gonna see how this video looks, And yeah, I do stuff like this because I can't help it. I get into like overdrive on my thoughts. I get into you know, distractibility and several different things bubbling all at once. So I'm trying to think of things that maybe some of your engineers, some of your contagious people haven't thought of. And I don't know how bad it's going to get, if we're going to be overwhelmed and really working out of the hospitals at some point. Like we're obviously probably getting some cross-contamination now. So think about moving air through the hospital so that isn't a tightened in box where your viral load just builds and builds and builds. All right, we'll see you guys later on.